the world is changing. The world will not be the same, right? There's massive changes going on, whether it's through AI, automation, the crisis, it's changing. In fact, if you ever read the IPCC sort of report, they concluded with this one line, which is like so powerful. It says, change is now inevitable. The only question is what kind of change, right? And that poses a question because it ultimately brings back, and we took that and said, okay, so how do we recognize that in every fight we're fighting, we're losing? If you fight around economic justice, labor rights, you're losing. Climate, we're losing on every. But what happens if you can find a way in which these movements become more connected to each other and recognize, I'm going to quote, because I don't have this ability to be able to think creatively like our artists, but Arundhati Roy, during the COVID pandemic, said, neoliberalism has embroidered this tapestry of injustice. There's 1,000 threads to it. And I always like look at that and go, yeah, she did that. That's how they've constructed this. But like every embroidery, there are some threads that if you pull, like unravel a lot. So what are those threads that allow us all to fight together and say, if you fought this, it changes something for all of us? And so we've been doing a lot of like, how do you bring these movements together to have this conversation? What does that look like? How do you think about livelihoods, the right to food, the right to energy, and economic change in a package of stuff? So rather than everybody saying, my fight is X, you're saying, I'm for X, but I'm contributing to this bigger frame, and everybody contributes to a bigger frame, and you then feel you're part of something much bigger. And especially at this moment where I think there's a real sense that we are, a despondency. It's only when you feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself that you can ride it out and say, there's hope. So that's what we've been doing. In other places, people call it just equitable ecological transitions. People call all sorts of words now, but it's happening in everywhere. In Brazil, I've been in Brazil where, people are trying to like connect. How do you fight against poverty in urban areas, but at the same time, protect, the forest? Because the right is saying it's a choice. You either fight for poverty or you fight against climate. You either protect this or you protect that. How do you stop that being a binary choice? You can only stop that if you actually bring those movements together to have this conversation and then build another movement. So even in the next couple of months, a whole number of like NGOs or activist groups in the more progressive end are trying to create a shared platform in the UK of like, what would 2026, 2027, our vision look like, because we're not happy with what's being put forward by political parties. So if we don't do this, like, how do you begin? And then how do you share resources? And what are the fights? So wealth tax, for example, the reason why many of you hear wealth tax so much, like from the unions, is because there's been a lot of conversation. Wealth tax, if we fight on wealth tax, we could all win, because it helps us on the economy, helps us on public services, helps us on climate, helps us on development. So everybody's rallying around saying, if you win that, that's a fundamental shift, and it's winnable, because in the global south, many of those countries in the global south are all demanding that a wealth tax be imposed, right? So you've got a possibility.